so I've got a little variety here of the 3-ply yarns. The coastal yarns there are 50% cotton, 50% wool that I got from Joanne of Spinning Yarns Weaving Tales. Now she doesn't stock this particular yarn anymore. She has lots of other ones that you can have a look up on her website. I'll put a link to her website on here. But she sent me these. I've been using these for the last 10 years to make a lot of my my blended blankets. I'll put in a picture of my sunrise sunset blanket that I made. And that is totally using colours like this that I've blended together. They've just all been 2-3 plies blended together. All right, so say we're going to use this now. Let's put them in a line that I might blend them in. That looks like it's the same colour, so we'll get rid of that one. And the orange, maybe get rid of that one. And then I would put maybe that's sort of maybe this one, and then a darker orange. Maybe go to that, and then into a beige. You know, I could even add a few more colours in there, but let's stick with those ones. I think is that the same or not? I think that's the same colour. It might be a little bit lighter. All right, but we'll leave those in actually because I might use 2 strands of them. All right, so we're going to work with these and we're going to try and make a little blend moss stitch blanket. So if you don't have 2 or 3 ply yarn, you can do this with 2 strands of 4 ply to make up your 8 ply. I'm actually going to use 3 strands for this demonstration, but you could use just 2 and try and transition them with colours that look similar so it's not too stark. Or you might even have a variegated yarn that's already 4 ply that you can add into this, and I'll see if I've got one in my basket that I can add in as well. All right, so I've just thrown in a few extra just balls that I had in my little basket that I showed you before, the little basket of leftovers. So you can see there's the coastal yarn there, but I've thrown in just a couple of other colours that I've got. So that's a variegated one, it's got bits and pieces in it. I thought a few greens, we'll see how that works. And then I've got these other ones that are also from Jo, but they were elements, so they've got already variegation in them. But I just thought they might work with, you know, maybe some of the browny tones. But they're all sort of like 2, 3, 4 ply yarns that I can work with, and then a couple of my own 8 ply ones, and we can add some of them in. So let's just have a little play. And we'll see what we can start with and what we can make out of these colours. Okay, so I'm going back to my 4 ply hook. Let's push some of these out of the way. And what colours are we going to start with? Let me think. All right, so when I'll take you for a little tour of my sunset blanket and we'll try and do something similar to that. All right, so this is my sunrise sunset blanket that I made a few years back using Joanne's coastal yarn. So you can see it's got all different shades in there, and it really is just those 2 or 3 strands together, changing them every few rows. All right, so I started there. So this is the border, and that's where I started my point of my moss stitch blanket. All right, so we started off with a very light yellow, and then after a few rows I threw in a mustard, and then maybe a pink, and then when I got to here I had some of those other variegated elements yarns that I threw in, just whatever I had in the basket that was left over. So you could use this, you could do a stash busting with this sort of thing, you know. Then I had some pinks, and then that one there, you can see that was actually like a yarn that had reds and greens in it. I just added it in with the yellows, some pinks, a little bit of purples in there, some oranges, and just slowly worked up and up and up. Tried to make it look like a sunset. I'll put a picture in here of the image that I used, and so I used that as my inspiration. And then for the border, I used a couple of rows of each of the colours that I've used for the border. All right, so let's go and play and see if we can make something similar to this. All right, so if I was going to make a sunset blanket, what would I think of? I might find an image of a sunset over the water, over the ocean. So then you could start with like a really light yellow, that could be the sand of the beach. And then it goes out into the water, which could be, sunsets in the dusk, getting towards the evening. So the water's no longer blue, it's starting to get darker. So I might start off with the sand and then maybe whites with the waves and then out to the ocean and then up onto the sunset where you have, the oranges and the darker tones at the bottom, and it gets lighter as you go up into the sky, into the heavens. So I might work it that way to look like an actual sunset, or I might just do just the sunset with no beach or no water, just cloud formations of oranges and yellows and reds and So I'll put that image in, and you'll see what the inspiration was for that blanket that I'd made. But let's say we're starting with what are we going to start with? Okay, let's just start with this sand then. We'll use this one and maybe this yellow. So you just gather your yarns together that you want to make. You might not want to make a sunset. You might want to make something else. Maybe you might want to make an ocean, like my blue ocean one that I made. I'll show you a picture of that one as well. And that was also just from an image, and got all my blues and greens together to make that one. All right, so these are the three colours we're going to start off with. So we'll get one strand of each. And when we put them together, that's really not even an 8-ply yet. It's only maybe a 4-ply. But let's see how that works together. So you might even put in something thicker. You may use an 8-ply yarn and add in to blend. That's another idea that you could have. You could have an 8-ply yarn. So for example, this green is an 8-ply yarn, and you might add a couple of these colours with it. A couple of the fine yarns with it. So it gives you that sort of coloured twist when you're working with it. That looks quite nice. So you could use an 8-ply and add in some 4-plies. Or you could use 2 4-plies, or it's limitless, isn't it? Just use what you've got, what you have available. If you don't have access to lots of different yarns and you're very limited, another idea is, do you have thrift shops where you live? I had this idea of visiting some thrift shops. I haven't got around to doing it yet. And because we live in a warmer climate, we don't wear a lot of wool up here. So our thrift shops, I won't find like thick woolly jumpers. But I'd like to go to visit a few different thrift shops and just have a look at what's available there. Maybe find an old jumper that someone's thrown away and they're selling it in a thrift shop for only a few dollars. I could buy that jumper, bring it home, wash it, pull the yarn apart and reuse it. So you might find a beautiful jumper or a beautiful blanket that someone's discarded at a charity or thrift store for a very, very good price. You could bring, if you don't actually like that, or it's got a hole in it, or it's damaged, or whatever, bring it home, unravel it, and use that yarn. You might find some colours in that you wouldn't find in your yarn shops where you live. All right, so here we've got these 3 colours together. Just move those back a bit so you can see my hands. And okay, so we're going to chain 3 and do a single crochet in that first chain, chain 2, and turn our work. I probably will split this video into 2 parts just because my last video was so long. I used up all my memory on my phone and my iCloud and my Gmail, and so it took me a week to upload it. So I may even break this up into smaller sections over a few videos. like, you know, part 1, part 2, so forth. So yeah, just so you can watch all of it, and also if you want to go back to something, it's not so hard to find where you wanted to look from. I don't know yet how to do timestamps. I haven't learnt to do that yet. Alright, so I'm just doing our moss stitch, chain 1, single crochet. So you've already seen that video of how to do this pattern with an acrylic or a solid colour. I just want to show you now how we can blend different colours together. Let's just do a few rows with these 3 colours before we change out one colour. Okay, so I've just pulled that out and redone that because it wasn't a nice 90-degree angle. So I did actually skip a stitch there. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't be afraid of pulling it out and starting again if you make a mistake. No matter how far you get into your work, sometimes I'll pull out a whole blanket because I've made a mistake way back, and it's all part of the learning process. And if you're wanting to get progress and get better at it, then don't be afraid of pulling out your mistakes. I'm not going to try and hide my mistakes from you, even though I've been crocheting for over 50 years. I still make them, and that's okay. It's just all part of learning. Sometimes when I'm crocheting and talking or watching TV, I'll make a mistake and I've just got to go back and fix it. All right, so I'll do a couple more rows with these 3 colours and then we'll transition to a new one. As I've said before, the beauty of crochet is when you pull something out, it's only 1 stitch at a time. So you just have to go back to where you've noticed your mistake and go from there. I know it can be a bit heartbreaking when you're newer at it to pull your work out because you put so much effort into it, but don't give up, just keep going and learn from your mistake. Because when you're using a few different strands together and they're different colours, you can actually sometimes get a bit confused as to where that chain 1 space is below, and that's what happened to me. I put it in the wrong space and then it changed the shape of what I was making. All right, so I'll make this one our last row and then let's choose the next colour. One in there, chain 1 and 1 more. All right, so at this point now, I'm going to cut off the lightest colour. Just give it a little tail and get rid of that one. And because I've got 2 balls of this one, I'm actually going to add the second one in there, the same colour. So it's not going to be a drastic change. It's very gradual colour change. All right, chain 2 and turn. I'm going to carry that tail along the top there so that I can work it in and I don't have any tails at the end of my work except for either end of the corners. Carrying that along. And yeah, I just love working with different colours like this. All right, so I've just worked a couple of rows with those 3 colours together. Remember, we took off the very light yellow and added in the 2, or another one of those ones, and we've still got that other lighter one there. But can you see how it's slowly transitioning from this light colour into a little bit darker? All right, so I might do 1 more row of that, and then we'll change out one of those darker orangey yellows and add something else in there. right, end of that row. Okay, so you can see that slowly blending from the lighter to the darker. Let's get rid of one of these orangey yellows. Just make sure I cut the right one. And these fine yarns can go a long way. So, you know, if you're doing this sort of blending work, they could last me like a long time and I could do a few blankets out of it. All right, let's go into maybe an orange, a light orange. And we'll add that in. And I've got 2 strands there. Why have I got 2? All right, the centre pulls come out. Just going to get that out of the way. If you don't have 2 balls of the same colour, that's the other thing you could do, is work from your centre pull and your outside pull to get 2 strands of the same colour. And that way you can still have 3, you know, blend 3 colours together or 2 colours together. So we can work over that tail end. Come on. It's not cooperating with me here. All right, and chain 1. All right, so I'll do a few rows with this orange and then I'll come back again when we're going to change the next colour. All right, so I've done a few rows there with that orange in there now. So can you see it's starting to slowly transition into getting darker there? From the light yellow, the darker yellows, and then a darker again with an orange in it. Let's cut out another one of our yellow balls now. And add in another orange. Let's do that. Holding our tail at the back and grabbing the new yarn and chaining 2, turning the work and holding the 2 tails at the top of the work so that you can work over that as you go. Chain 1. All right. Somebody did comment and ask me what my inspiration is when I'm working. As I said, you know, I may, because we live on the coast near the beach, I wanted to do the sunsets, show the beautiful oranges and yellows for our sunroom. So I worked off some photo images. The other one was the ocean that I did, deep blue sea, I think I called it. So that was my inspiration. But sometimes I just have a basket of wool in front of me and I'll just use different colours and just blend them as I go. And then the blanket might get to a certain size and then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, that reminds me of the forest, or that reminds me of whatever. So your inspiration can be whatever your inspiration is, wherever you live. You may live in a country where there's snow. So maybe you want to blend together some, you know, dark greens and whites and sort of snowy colours to paint a picture of that landscape. Or maybe you live in the city and you have a city skyline and at night all the lights are twinkling. You could pick colours. Ooh. Yes, I nearly had a heart attack with that. I think there's lightning nearby. Oh my goodness, I'm leaving that in because that was funny. I did jump. What was I saying? Yeah, your inspiration can be your inspiration. So you might be inspired by all the twinkling lights in the city where you live. It can be whatever you like, or it can be a place where you want to go on holidays, or a destination, or maybe an animal or some flowers that you like to you know, paint a picture of all different colours. You remember the cushion that I made? I'll pop a picture in here. So it reminded me of one of Monet's paintings. So that's what I had in mind when I was using those blues and purples and greens. So they were my own hand-dyed yarn, and popped them together, and yeah. And now you can probably hear the kookaburras after the lightning out there. It's all happening here today. Nature at its best. So cute. Little smushy. So fluffy. Look how fluffy he is underneath. There's a happy one. Hello? They're having a good old laugh at the lightning and thunder. Maybe they saw me jump and they're laughing at me. Who knows? All right, so I'm just going to do this last row with the 2 oranges, and then we're going to add in another colour. So if you've gathered something, supplies together now, and you're working along with me, how are you going? How are your colour changes going? All right, last one. Okay, so look at that. See how it's already starting to look like a beautiful sunrise or a sunset, isn't it? All right, so let's cut out our last yellow now. And we're going to add in another orange. Oh, this is sort of a reddy colour. Maybe that might work. Or should I use a variegated colour? I want to change it up a bit. Let's try, I wonder how that would work in there, because it's still got a bit of orange. Let's try that. Let's try a bit of, let's be random and put a bit of green and yellow in there too, with our 2 oranges. So this is what I do sometimes. I'll just put things together and then try a few rows, and then if I think, oh no, that's ugly, it doesn't work, I'll pull it out and try something else. You know, because when you look at the sky, even when there is a sunset, there's always like darker colours running through the clouds, and or, you know, cloud formations. with the sunsets you can put in, you know, some pinks, and even some purples would look nice actually. You'll get pinks and purples in your sunset as well. All right, I'll do a few rows of this one and then I'll come back. All right, so I've just worked a few rows with that, with this, you know, variegated yarn in with the 2 oranges. And can you see how it's now transitioned from the oranges and it's giving us a fleck? Like you can see little sprinkles of green and yellow, a little bit of white in there, cream. So that's how you can get those sort of speckled, the effect of a speckled yarn without actually even having one. Just by using a variegated yarn and a couple of solids. And so now that we've got that speckled in, we've got a little bit of green in there. I could add in maybe, you know, another green if I wasn't going to do a sunset, or even if I did. Let's put one in. Let's just see how it goes. So let's just cut out one of our oranges. That's that one. And we're going to add in this variegated green yarn. All right, now if ordinarily I wouldn't be sitting at a table crocheting. I would be having these in a yarn bowl and on the floor, and they would be much easier to work with, and I wouldn't have to be pulling my yarn. What am I trying to say? I wouldn't be having to, like, you know, lengthen my yarns that I can work with it. But when it's on the table, it's a bit more fiddly. So if I'm looking fiddly, that's why. Sorry. It's looking interesting. All right, I'll do a few rows of this and I'll be back. All right, so there you can see that's the green. So that green one that I've added in with that and the orange. And we're getting some nice little different colour changes there. All right, so now I think I might take out this dark one. And I'm going to add in a bright orange. Maybe this one, this beautiful dark orange. And we'll make this our last colour change now for this video. All right, so I'm just going to work with a few rows of this and I'll come back and show you how that looks. All right, so I did I did a couple of rows with these 3 there, just transitioning. And then I got rid of that one and I put in a darker rusty red orange, so those 3 colours there. So I've just done a couple of rows of that. So you can see the transitions now from lighter to darker. And you don't have to keep getting darker. I mean, you can go backwards again and, you know, go lighter, darker, lighter, darker, all the way along, changing it up as you like, adding in extra colours here and there. You know, I could add in maybe like a bright pink or even a green somewhere. One thing I didn't mention is that when I do colour changes, I try to do them at the end of a row, like right at the end of a row. There's a little one that I need to snip off. There we go. Yeah, so try and do the colour changes at the end of a row, but that's not to say that you can't change colours halfway through a row either. If you've just got a small ball and then you run out, you know, you might run out in the middle of a row, you can join another colour, maybe try to join one that's similar. But yeah, that's sort of colour blending, but then you could do, you know, like just stripes of all different colours with this same pattern. It really is just up to you. But there, that's probably, you know, the closest to how I work when I'm doing colour blending. So I hope that's given you a little bit of insight how I've done that. And if you'd like to know some more, if you'd like me to do another one of these colour blending videos, let me know. I can do some other ones. Yeah, and so I just wanted to give you an idea of how you can get this sort of effect using solid colours, or maybe just, you know, 1 or 2 different variegated yarns. You could do as long as your colours, if you're wanting to do blending, if you want it to blend and transition smoothly, then keep colours that are similar, in a similar colour palette or a similar tone. Like if you're going to use a yellow and a beige together, or maybe this, you know, try to keep the soft colours together and then slowly blend one out and the next one in, rather than abruptly changing from, say, a light yellow to a dark red. You know, those two, they're sort of very contrasting. And so if you put those two together, you're going to get a more of a stripy sort of effect than if you blend, you know, similar colours together and slowly transition them out and back in again. That's when you're going to get that nice fade. It's really just a matter of playing around with it and seeing what you like. As I said, you can use these lace weight yarns. If I'm using lace weight, I'll use 3 strands together, and the fades are much more transitional and smooth. And yeah, I really do enjoy using 3 strands together. But if I don't have them, or I want to use some variegated yarns, I might use 2 4-plies together. And then try to keep those colours similar if you're wanting to fade, unless you're wanting, you know, as I said, completely like stripy, random colour changes. You can do that too. It's really just whatever your taste is. But if for blending, try to keep them in the same colour palette and the same tones in and out. All right, so I hope that's given you a bit of an idea of how to do that. That's the moss stitch or linen stitch. And yeah, that will actually make a really nice blanket if I continue with that. I don't know if I will or not, but yeah, I actually do like that. And I love that it's got that bit of green in it. I probably could add some more darker colours. I've got another dark one here, like that. You know, that would look nice in there somewhere. Blending that in. And as I said, a couple of green, bright greens somewhere. Yeah, there's just so many possibilities, isn't there? But this is a great way, if you've only got solid colours, of doing colour blending. But then, as I mentioned earlier, if you do have variegated yarns, then you've got an automatic sort of colour blend and fade there just within those variegated yarns, and when you're working them, they will transition. As long as you've got one colour, so for example, this one's white, it's got a yellow in it, as long as the next colour has got a yellow to blend in with it. That one's got a bit of pink, as long as the next colour has got some pinks to blend in with it. You might have a darker pink, and the next one has a darker pink to blend in with it. Oranges, and then look for a yarn that's got a bit of orange to transition. So whatever, each one has a colour that is going to transition to the next colour, and then you'll get that lovely fade effect. You can go back and forth, but you wouldn't put this, or say for example this, with that, because it's not going to fade. You're going to get stripes. But if you can transition one colour into the next, you're going to get a nice fade. All right, I'll try to show you with a different colour. Okay, so here you've got another example. Okay, so we've got a purple. These are different yarn weights, but anyway, I'm just doing this for the colours. Here you've got some purple, and then in the next one, you might have that same purple there as you've got here. That would transition. You've got some lighter blues and purples that you have in this one. Transition to that. And then the same blues and purples in the next one. Then you might have some pinks that will translate to the next yarn. You've got a couple of blues there that will transition into this next yarn, and then the darker blues that will transition into a completely blue one with brown, you know, and then you might have a brown next. So again, you've got this fade happening that you can transition into different colours with some related colours in each of the yarns. So there's just so many different possibilities that you can play around with. Yeah, whatever your inspiration is, whether it's you want to pick something that inspires you to begin with, like a sunset, a forest, a garden, somewhere you've been or somewhere you'd like to go, and you want to use that as an inspiration for your colour palette before you go out and buy your yarns, or you've just got, you know, a basket of leftover yarns that you want to play around with. Just try to pick out the colours that blend in the same tone not a dark one in, and that would be the next one, but the other way. Lighter, darker, darker, and then get lighter again. Add in some other colours. You might have a pink here, and then a red. And then maybe next to this one you could have the darker red. So you see what I'm doing there? Yeah, and then you get these nice transitional fade effect. Have a little play around. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're trying it and how it's working for you. And if you have any more questions, as I said, pop them in the comments. You can email me and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, bye for now.